Hey everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Snapchat. I'm joined today by none other than Cozy Snap Cozy. We've had an absolutely insane week this week, and we're going to be discussing Ravonna. Now, Ravonna has been a very controversial card, and some people are, we'll just say, a little disappointed with its impact on the meta. How has your week's been, and quite frankly, how was your time testing Ravonna?
Dude, I've been surprised by cards not living up to their expectations. Like, Silver Samurai, maybe, or, maybe even Doc. And I'm like, okay, he wasn't quite what I thought he would be. Ravonna is probably, I think, for the community, the biggest, like, whoa, what happened? Now, I think a lot of it has to do with Loki being around and being who he is in the meta at the certain time and what the meta is at the moment. But my God, dude, she just completely underperformed. Almost, it reminds me of Shocker and High Evo, right? We saw the Shocker effect, and yes, he's decent, but like we were like, oh, this is gonna be the card. We know what cost reduction does, and then you just realize it didn't play out exactly what we thought, right? I think Ravonna is just such an interesting case, and it does come down to what already looks like. When I saw, I don't know if we can just start here. Glenn said they were on the fence of making her a 2-cost card, and they wanted to err on the side. That tells me everything we need to know, right? Like, they wanted to err on the side of it. To me, I'm a bit shocked it passed testing as it was, because this was supposed to be her week. We were supposed to have this Snapchat and be like, my God, Mobius is coming to save the day, because Ravonna decks have been absolute hell. And now she's almost a snap condition for your side. You can just snap when you see her.
When I was doing my Ravonna testing, when I saw someone else play Ravonna against me, I was like, hey, I might actually win this game because their deck sucks too. Like, it's like, it's actually exciting, but it's crazy because you're right. In terms of like the expectations versus the reality, I think Ravonna has been the largest delta that we've had in a long time, because like cost reduction we know is incredibly powerful, but this felt incredibly awkward. Even lists that like seemingly should have worked in, like Patriot, for instance, it still felt awkward. So like, I don't know, it just didn't fit.
That's what's so surprising. Even looking still at the lists, just looking at them in Patriot, looking at the Goblin list, Darkhawk, you can feasibly look at it and be like, well, this has got to be good. But it's okay. It's just not, it's not putting out the numbers that the other lists right now in the top of the meta are. It's not competing with it. And then B, there's usually a better play. And then see the stats, right? Like, I'm not going to just... my video's name was literally, I was wrong. It's so hard to predict cards, but this one seemed like it was a lot easier to predict because of the cost reduction. I will say, though, it sounds like we are getting a 2-cost Ravonna, and in that case, that's going to solve a lot of it. Now, Mobius is going to exist. I understand that. However, if she's 2-cost and Mobius is 2-cost, it's going to be interesting because you could almost have ways to get a couple of plays out with Ravonna potentially. There's going to be a battle of them, which I think it should have always been too, right? They're both at 2-3. They're both available to throw out there. If one comes out before the other, it's going to obviously hurt the other in some instance. But yeah, it's going to help her a lot. But obviously, Mobius does exist now.
The only weird thing about that is like the way the spotlight cache system works is you buff the card after the spotlight caches are gone. Then people are like, okay, now the card's good. And then what do? Like, people just don't have her. Like, it's just they can't get her either. I mean, well, actually, with that being said, only going to be 3,000 tokens. I mean, yep. Only 3,000 still, fair chunk. But it's Series 4. Okay. So that's like your option, I guess. But it's out of the spotlight caches. And I think that like ultimately the thing that really stood out to me with Ravonna, currently sitting at a 47% win rate, and it's only being kind of like brought up by one deck that's operating about a 54% win rate. It's like it has a Darkhawk Iron Man package in it, which makes sense. That's the best deck available for Ravonna. But as a whole, every single archetype that was tested with Ravonna made the deck worse. Okay, any archetype with Patriot, worse with Ravonna. Any archetype with like even like Brood Patriot, like boosted Brood type stuff, worse with Ravonna. Every single one was just worse with Ravonna, which is basically the theme. Worse with Ravonna. Like, put it on a t-shirt.
I don't know why I was under the illusion that she would work with Bast. I felt like Bast was kind of like manufacturing this kind of power on there, and then you could just end up playing the Iron Man. Like, Cerebro 3 ended up being so insanely crazy, but you want to play Bast instead of her now because Bast is 1 cost. It works with the curve. why play Iron Man for a little cheaper when ultimately you want that 3 power and then it doesn't work? Yeah, you have a failsafe, but that deck is kind of nailed down to a perfection where you don't need a failsafe. Kind of the same for Mr. Negative. It felt awkward. That was the main problem. So if they fix that, if they make her a 2-cost, there are going to be some great play lines. And she's still going to be a greedy card in a sense because you can't, Mobius is going to exist in the world. But such as all the decks out there, Armor, Cosmo, the tech cards, I think she's going to enable some really cool combinations. But we're going to have to see how Mobius affects it.
Well, Mobius is obviously going to, have a massive effect on the viability of Ravonna going forward. But it's also worth noting that if Ravonna does get buffed, which I think is probably going to happen, now you have Mobius in the mix. So you do have the hard counter available to players. And Ravonna is going to be a card just like Zabu, just like Surfer, that is always going to benefit from new releases that have synergistic elements with that card, right? Like, it's always going to get better over time. It might not be meta relevant right now, but when you're working with cards that have less than one power, the reason why those cards have less than 1 power is because usually their effects are incredibly strong. Iron Man's effect has to be like it's insane. The reason why he's a 5/0 is because of how powerful his effect is, right? Even something like Black Widow is a 2/1 for a reason because of how impactful her effect is. So these cards, if they come out with these low power levels, it's because they have potential. And yeah, discounting them is incredibly powerful. Mobius in there is incredibly impactful. But ultimately, Ravonna might not be the card it needs to be right now, but it might be in the future. I think it'll be a cog eventually in a very meta-relevant deck. It's just not there.
Your Iron Man Mystique combos, they're not going to happen. You're not going to be able to pull those off anymore, with Morbius existing, because there's just no way, for the most part, on a consistent basis, that you're not going to see more Mobius all the way up until turn 5-6.
When it comes right down to it, 12-card decks, every card has to really carry its weight. The argument can be made, and I understand this argument, that Ravonna is not about turn 3 or 4 or 5. Ravonna is about what you do on turn 6 or 7, right? But in order to even get to turn 7, you got to play like a Magic, so then that's a turn occupied. Then you have the Ravonna turn, so you're committing 2 turns to play on turn 7. What's that turn 7 even look like?
Yeah.
You're playing a whole bunch of low power cards. Even if you are playing Iron Man Mystique, which is still amazing, what have you done the rest of the game? You've played Ravonna plus Miss Magic for 2 turns. You got no power on the board. There's nothing to Iron Man. There's nothing. Right. So it's this catch-22 of you want to utilize these abilities, and Zola, who the hell is Zoloing? Who's getting Zola'd here? Nobody. No one's worth Zola. You're gonna Zola Ravonna? You know what I mean?
If you look at the cards that she reduces, which I can pull up some of them in the graphic that we made for last week, they're all really cool cards, like you said, but there's just what are you gonna do with okay, Morph is cool, I guess, sure, but Darkhawk, okay, Dracula, Arnim Zola. If you think of all these cards, they need something else going on with them. You have to have some more synergy. Taskmaster. The most fun that I had is I put her in the Kitty Pryde Taskmaster deck, and it was actually kind of cool. You could throw down an Invisible Woman and have, dude, this was nuts. I was playing Wong, Black Panther, and or Wolfsbane as my final play on 6. I had an Invisible Woman Taskmaster. So I would get this Wolfsbane or Black Panther to 70, 60, whatever power. And then the Taskmaster would copy that. But dude, it was so hard to pull off some stupid combo like that. I might as well just try to do a Wong Gambit Swarm type of deal, right? At the end of the day. Or Hazmat, whatever. So yeah, hopefully the change does fix it. And it's important to see for future cards when we talk about them. I think we both try our best to really evaluate cards. Looking at every inch of detail on that card, right? The Bass interaction, whatever that might have been, I think could have been a bit more obvious. But we won't miss cost reduction again because of more Mobius being in the game.
And actually, this past month and the past 2 months has really been a lesson on how hard it is to actually predict the meta impact of specific cards. Think about Legion. Think about Ravonna. These cards have been really hard to evaluate until they're in your hand. And so it's a good lesson moving forward too. Like even when you're trying to plan for spotlight caches or your tokens, or if you're free to play and you're trying to make a plan as to what you should be unlocking, I still think, and I've been saying this every week on my videos where I'm doing like these statistical analysis and stuff like that, you should be waiting until the end of the week before you open your spotlight caches or spend your tokens or whatever, because like you want to have like that week of data is way more valuable than anything up front. Like obviously it's super exciting to be able to talk about these cards. Like I love it. I love the theory crafting and stuff, but until they're in your hand, like you don't have the metrics to go off of to really know their meta impact. So like if you're free to play, like Ravonna is a perfect lesson in waiting, being patient, and saving your resources until you can make a really truly educated decision as to whether or not the card is the right fit for you.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because like the Monday pre-talk of the Snapchat that I do on my side of the channel, it's great to get like the cogs turning and perhaps like stir some interest. If you're going to get the card already, you know, go and fire for it. But usually I would personally, almost all of us get a video out the following morning on the card's performance and our first impressions. And it's important to see how they play out, right? And you can look back to Alioth, you can look back to X23 and these other cards. Ravonna, I think, is an anomaly of a major whiff that's not going to happen all that often with a hype that doesn't meet the demand. But yes, it is important to just wait a little bit more as stats come in, impressions come in, and see how it kind of fizzles out. Now, if they take her down to a 2 cost, this is going to make our next subject list already even tougher than it was to begin with. Alex, in a short, it was like within 5 minutes, we had to put together our top 10 2-cost cards in the game. This, I thought doing a 6-cost tier list was tough, or ranking maybe destroy cards that we've done in the past. This might have it beat. I hope every cost in the game becomes as competitive within said cost as 2-cost is, because there's so many viable options. I couldn't rank just 10, but I had to.
It was so funny. So like, just so you guys know, like behind the scenes, Cozy and I did this together like within a few minutes. We're like, hey, let's do this topic. And we did it together. Cozy was like actually stressing out. Like you were getting stressed out making your top 10. And I was kind of I was cruising. I know which my top ones are. And you're like, oh my God, Carnage isn't even going to make it. How does Carnage not even make it? And it's so funny because like that's how competitive these lists are. Like it was so fun to do them together, and we don't know each other's lists. We actually did not tell each other what we picked, but like it was so funny to hear you stressing out over picking your top 10 because it is hard.
Well, I had them all out, and then I forgot to put like Mobius because we want to slot him where we thought Mobius was, and I was like, it jacks everything up, and I can't leave one off. And then Alex over here was like, oh yeah, Carnage wasn't even close to my top 10. I'm like, Alex, how? But yeah, dude, we have we don't know our list. I'm gonna be honest, I still have 2 written down at number 10 because I have to leave one off, and it's gonna feel pretty damn bad either way. But let's go and get to it, man. Let's start at number 10. I'm gonna let you kick it off.
Number 10 for me is gonna be Sentinel. Sentinel is a card that I've always liked. I think it provides you with a very consistent play style. It's a beginner-friendly card, and it's kind of sad to me, Cozy, that a lot of people, and especially in earlier pools, are looking to constantly get rid of Sentinel. They're like, how do I replace this Sentinel card? I'm like, don't replace it. It's a good card. Like, what are you doing? Its win rate is like, what, 58% or something stupid? Like, it's always been a really high percent win rate card. It's just good. Sentinel's good. There ain't nothing wrong with Sentinel.
We're going to have such dramatically different lists. I just know it. We're going to have such dramatic. I love it. I can't wait for it. I'm forced to choose now, and I'm going to go with my choice. Number 10, which we know that Carnage is not on the list. And then I know that this card is not on Alex's list because he did say this. And he left it off like, oh, it's just not on my list. I don't know how to say it. How Lizard is even at 10 is mind-boggling to me. I'll put him here because of the negative effect of him. But borderline 2-5. He kind of controls the opponent in a sense, and almost always is going to get the value or the priority that you're looking to get. It feels weird even putting him this low, but because we've had other 2-5s become more multi-dimensional, I've had to go ahead and put him down a little bit lower than this. Don't know what happened to the camera there. I've had to put him down a bit lower at number 10 here. But Lizard did not make your list.
No, not at all. It's funny because you were lamenting over Carnage not making yours, and I was like, man, Lizard's not going to make mine, which is crazy because if we go back like, what, 4 or 5 months, was it? I mean, wow, we've been doing the Snapchat for a long time. I think I put Lizard in my top 10 of all cards, right? All cards. And all they did was they changed 1 power on the ongoing ability, and now all of a sudden it's not even on my top 10 versus just for the 2 drops. Isn't that wild? Yeah, absolutely insane.
Incredible. What is your number 9?
Number 9 for me is gonna be Forge. I think that Forge has had a really big impact on the game. It's been absolutely a phenomenal card. It's working in a wide number of decks, which obviously traditionally Forge never used to be like that. Forge never used to be a card that you could reliably play in multiple different. Hell, you didn't play the card at all. You just didn't play the card at all. And now Forge is making a comeback as a major combo-centric piece. So number 9 for me, Forge.
Yeah, so Forge was the one that I left off, which is weird because he's so good. Man, him and Lizard were the two that I was kind of debating. I've got Luke Cage here at number 9. It's too hard to leave him out because of the role he plays against High Evo right now, the role that he plays with locations, and just what he serves in Snap, man. Kind of crazy to think that he is regarded as such, but he is just kind of like, we talked about it on my side with Mobius and how he doesn't have a bad play about him, right? Outside of maybe his curve play with his power. I got him at number 9. Did he make your list?
Yeah, he's a little higher for me. He's
All
a little
right.
higher for me. We'll talk about him.
What's your number 8?
Number 8 for me, this is going to be Mobius. Morbius. I typed it in as Mobius. See, we're screwed up already. Morbius. I'm still messing it up. The discard one, the 2/0 discard. I mean, it's literally the king of discard. Obviously susceptible to the counterplays. He sits there on turn 2. Worry about him getting Enchantress and stuff, but I like that counterplay. But legitimately, like, this is like a 2/12 very consistently. It's one of the cards that really carries the entire archetype. I love it. I think Morbius is a fantastic card.
I barely left out Morbius. He was definitely a tough one too. Like the ones that depended on others, unless they were like way too good, I had to end up leaving out. Sadly, because I had to put Mirage right here. I think Mirage in this meta alone with Loki, you can't leave her out because of getting the extra card play. But on top of that, kind of going back to Loki, and we talked about this last week, is like people aren't putting bad cards in their deck, right? So you're taking a card that they've wanted to have. They're going to have it too, but you just have the better play. And you have the intel. You can hold on to the card for a later turn. Mirage is one of those cards that, to me, is why, like, Sentinel was close, but for me, I'd rather have Mirage because I know that I'm going to get a good tempo play out that's going to feel great, and I have a way to fit in some unexpected synergy into my deck.
I like it. I like the call with Mirage. I think Mirage is hot right now is because it works well with Loki too. I think that really works well for it.
Yeah.
But as a whole, no, I'm a big fan of Mirage. We on number 6? Are we at 6 now?
We are on your 7.
My 7. Okay, my 7 is going to be Shadow King. Shadow King dropping down to 2 cost. It's easy to almost forget that he's a 2 cost, right?
Yeah.
How do we not talk about Shadow King? I think it's a great tech card. Can be a little awkward to use at times. It takes a little bit of practice, but I mean, it hits a lot of the key meta part. I mean, it hits Collector, right? It hits your Angelas, which are a big problem right now. It's a tool that's been given us to deal with some of the Loki decks, but Loki just outpowers it, right? Because of the amount of discounted effects that they can play. But ultimately, I really, really like Shadow King, and I think I'm fitting him into more decks than I expected.
Yeah, I've got him. I'll talk about him in a quick, brief moment. I have him close to it, but this is where I had the Collector. It's a bit rough trying to put Morbius and Collector on the list somewhere because Collector at its base cost and or Morbius are like 215 plus cards, right? They're pretty one-dimensional, which I try to look at cards that are a bit more versatile. But then you also have to weigh like what they bring into that deck, and it's pretty damn insane and crazy. Because I put Mobius in this list, that has me assume that Loki will then be affected by Mobius, which has me put Collector down a little bit lower. So I've got Collector here at the number 7 spot. Hit me with number 6, Alex.
Number 6 for me is Luke Cage. You talked about Luke Cage, and I'm discussing him for all the same reasons. I think he's really good. I think him going from a 2/1 to a 2/2 was impactful. Does he stay at 2/2? I think so, probably. I mean, I would love to see him at 2/3 because I think that is being a more consistent stat line. But like realistically, his effect's amazing. So 2/2 is probably fine, especially when you consider how many negative affecting locations there are. You have so many different archetypes that pound away at your board state. It killed the Scorpion plays. It destroys High Evo, but to the point that actually you play Luke Cage to counter High Evo. You play Luke Cage in High Evo to counter the High Evo mirror match, basically.
Right.
I think it's a great card, and I'm surprised that you put it lower than me because I think that you like Luke Cage even more than me. So that's kind of funny,
dude. It's just because the cards above it just for me edge out a bit better. Well, this is where I've got Shadow King. I think that he is going to go up more. He's kind of in a weird spot at the moment. Again, Loki has this list tough in the meta that we're currently in. But Shadow King is, whether it's Cerebro and or like we didn't talk about him as a cube winner, but I think this guy is a huge cube stealer, one that I forget about often. Yeah, he comes with the con. I mean, if this guy didn't set your own cards back to base power, good God, I think he would be what the best 2-cost card, right? Just to counter everything out there. It's hard to believe that for the rest of Snap, right up there with cost reduction is boosted stats. So Shadow King has got to be just a viable card moving forward. So this is where I've got the King of Shadows.
Number 5. We're going into our top 5 now, Cozy. This is where I have Collector. Now, I had to bring him back a little bit for the same reason you did, because Triple M is going to have an impact on the Loki decks. But at the same time, I don't think it's crazy that Collector gets buffed. Like, if Triple M destroys Loki as it should, I would see Collector maybe going back to its original setting to make it more viable in other decks. I would like to see it, because I don't like the idea that Collector's now a one-trick pony in one single deck. It had a place in other places as well. So ultimately, Collector, number 5. It still gets super big. It's still super meta relevant as of right now. I think it's worth his 5 spot.
I think the thing about him is the more I've played against Loki decks, the better I can handle Collector. Like, if you're playing a Loki deck and he's preposterous, but you have to play him down before you Loki. And so then I just concentrate my buildup on that lane, and it's really hard for Collector to match like a peak buildup of another deck, right? Like depending, like your optimal buildup deck. So that's why I have him down. And then with Bounce getting affected by Mobius too, like that's going to be a Collector deck that's hurt. I definitely see him going back to his power, but even then, like how much does that absolutely affect him? We're going to have to see, but I understand the love for him lately with how crazy he's been. My list is a lot on value, which is why it was tough to leave out Sentinel and Craven. I thought has been a lot of fun lately. This is, though, where I've got Silk as just the catch-all 2/5, great stats, no con, builds up other 2 power cards, and best of all, Alex, she can be played into lanes that are closed down. Silk is, man, it's crazy. She's been out since June, and just now, probably over the last 2 months, have been getting the play that she deserves. She's awesome, man. I love her. I think she's fantastic for mainly having the dependable stat, but also what she does for multiple other cards. Miles Morales, Craven, and some other cards.
I absolutely respect the call on Silk. I left it off my list, not because it's not a good card. It's just not in my top 10. Like, I don't like playing Silk as much. I don't like the unreliability of my turn 6 or 7 play. That kind of stuff. Like, I like to be able to do the math, and Silk makes you can't do the math. Like, you just can't do the math with Silk. It's like, it's classic Jesus take the wheel type stuff when you play Silk. And I'm not a huge fan of that, but I do absolutely agree that it's a fantastic card.
I feel like maybe back in the day, it doesn't feel that way much anymore because of the decks that she should be going in, right? Like, I don't think you play her as like a Lizard value card, but if you play her in the Craven, I get what you mean. Definitely Silk is not for everybody. Like, there's no question about that. So you don't have Lizard or Silk, the 2 highest ones. I like it. Interesting. Great. I'm peaked to hear the others. What is your next card?
My next card at number 4 is Zabu. How can it not be Zabu? I still think Zabu is good. Yeah, it's same. So it's 4 on Zabu.
Yep.
Like, it sucks to, like, when I was doing the research, Zabu at a 52% win rate feels way, way lower than I expected. But, like, it's what's happening. And then more Mobius, Triple M is going to knock some out of it as well. I think that Zabu's best days are going to be, we always say this, his best days are ahead, but are his best days behind?
Yeah.
Like, Zabu used to be the absolute best card in the game. I still think it's good. There's always going to be 4 drops coming out that interact with Zabu, but maybe its best days are actually behind itself.
I think it's okay to say that too. Like, Darkhawk and Zabu, both great cards. They're going to be good cards, but their best days are behind them. Technically, like same as, like Surfer in a way, right? Even though his best days are also ahead of him. Zabu, though, is always going to have an impact with 4-cost cards. I think it's interesting to say, too, that Mobius now is going to allow them not to be as strict on the 4-cost slot. They have said that they've been very careful with what to do with 4-cost because of Zabu, but now that you have Mobius as this like constant answer to Zabu, you could put a lot more powerful cards that kind of earn that 4-cost slot. That I'm actually calling it now. I think we're going to get more cards with abilities, kind of like Dracula. Like, we've gotten a fair amount of like 4/9s, 4/10s. We haven't had a lot of like unique 4s, and I think that we might start seeing that now that they can do that under the restrictions of Zabu. So yeah, I've got him at number 4 for me as well. We're on to the top 3, buddy, and this is where I thought it got pretty close, pretty dicey. Who do you got at number 3?
So this is a product of the meta. So I've always had my number 1. My number 1 doesn't change. You already know what it is. But number 2 and 3 was like, I was like this, right? And I decided Triple M goes 3. Could have been 2. Could have been 2. Probably should have been 2. But I think with the current meta, there's another card that I like a little better.
Yeah, I can't think of who you would have. I have one. I hope you have mine on there, but maybe not. Okay, who is it?
Okay. Now you're making me nervous because I've done this before. Are we doing the Thanos thing again where I forgot about a card?
No, because I think the card that I have on here, now you're making me feel like I forgot a card. I feel like the card that I have on here should be on here. I guess I could understand why you don't have it. So we'll have our Triple M conversation in a second. I might as well say mine so that we can kind of lean into it. If she's not on your list, I would be shocked.
Of course she's on my list,
okay.
Cozy.
I was going to call you bananas.
It's Angela 2 for me. I couldn't decide. You made me so nervous, man.
Oh, my God. Me too. I was nervous for you. I was like, dude, if this guy forgot Angela. Angela is... It's so cool if you look at Angela's art, too. The fact that she was a 2-1, right? At one point, Angela will always be a value card to play. And even more so because we have Silk and because we have Nightcrawler. And we have our both number 1s. And Jeff, spoiler alert, there's so many ways to play Angela down. Always 2-8. You can mitigate her being above 2-8. Shadow King exists, but my God, dude. Right? Like, it's Angela.
Yeah. Yeah, I decided Angela 2 just because I think that she's doing so much work in the current meta. Also, like, looking into the future, like with Elsa Bloodstone and other cards, like, I think Kitty Pryde still has a role to play in this meta. And if Kitty Pryde is relevant, Angela's relevant.
Yeah.
It's that simple. The two are tied together like Snowguard and Loki, right? Like, they're just tied together. And so for me, it's like, I think Angela's always going to be a very consistent play.
Yep.
I just don't see a disadvantage to ever putting Angela in a deck that has those types of value generation.
Agreed. And so we can kind of lean on. One is Jeff. Obviously, I have Jeff above Mobius because Jeff is like Mobius, where he's played in every deck with no downside, but you get a bit more of an advantage and attack ability with Jeff and flexibility, right? In my opinion. And it's a bigger answer. Even though Mobius answers a lot of decks, Jeff answers every deck in a sense, right? And it allows you to change your plan, what you can't really do with Mobius. Mobius, where's my graphic? Mobius I have at 2, but I understand why you could have him at 3. That's how impactful this card's going to be, though. I think people may be shocked. That's truly... this isn't a Ravonna situation. This is a clear as day. It won't jump out the page, sex appeal, crazy. But neither did Jeff. Jeff didn't, like... People were like, it's a souped-up Nightcrawler when he came out. And look at him. Look at our baby land shark fly.
When Jeff first came out, the reason why I bought him was because, honestly, the Rene Gonzalez variant was in my shop day 1. I was like, I have to get this. I have to buy this. So then the variant made me want to play the card more and more. And then I'm like, wait a minute, this card's amazing. It does everything I wanted. It just does exactly what I need it to do all the time. Yeah. So I just kept playing it. I kept playing it over and over again. And then sure enough, I fell in love with the card. Of course, it's my number 1. It's always been my number 1. It was never in question. You knew before I even made the list it was going to be my number 1. And I'm just glad we agree on something for a change.
I started with him and I went down. I mean, the cards that got snubbed on my list, obviously Sentinel, Armor, Mysterio. Right now in this meta, I had to leave off, even though, like, come on, Wolverine, ridiculous. Like, it's
Craven
cool. Craven I gave to Silk, but yeah, Craven 2. Medusa is super reliable. Freaking Daredevil off this list. That's how
he's
tight
my
it is.
11. Yeah. He's at 11 for me.
And I left Forge off too. So like it's man, a lot of disrespect. Lizard or Silk to even make 11 or 12 on Alex's list. My God, man, it hurts me. I hope that you make I'm gonna look out on your channel for when you make a deck with those two and be like. That takes us to our final topic of today, though, and this one was a little bit easier to make. We did underrated cards last week. We have our favorite cards of the season. We do this each September around the 3rd week, Alex. One of always my favorite cards at each cost. Let's start with the 1-cost cards.
Number 1 for me at the 1 cost has been Snowguard. Yes, Snowguard got buffed. How fun has this card been? And listen, not just with Loki, not just with Devil Dinosaur. I'm talking about the actual cards themselves, specifically the bear. I've been enjoying the bear quite a bit, and also the defensive capabilities of the hawk, like being able to disable locations like what's it called, the dream dimension, stuff like that. Oh my god, perfect. Or even what's it called, when my opponent is playing depending on the Bifrost to move their cards, and I'm just like, no. Like I had that where like I'm like, no, you're not moving nowhere.
Yep.
Right? I love it. I've been really enjoying Snow Guard. The only thing that is weird sometimes is the text on the hawk doesn't really make it clear that the locations pop back as the game resolves.
Yeah.
Right? Which is kind of weird. I think that that is like something they might need to consider changing, or at least making clear. Like I feel like if the game's ending in its turn 6 and you have the hawk down, the board should end at that state. The locations should not reactivate and resolve. No?
No, because it's too powerful then. I get why they do that. I like that it counters Limbo, but then it would devalue like Legion and honestly locations. You could just hold on to the hawk the entire time and play it and just nuke it. And yeah, it's too energy. Yeah. They're tough because their descriptions need to be like this long, and that's against like their code. I know that they have it like they wanted to code of conduct, code of cards. Snow Guard's mine too. I made a list of the newest cards and I put her in S tier. A couple comments, not a lot, but a couple were like, oh, it's just because of the meta. Nope, has nothing to do with Loki. That's just an added bonus, right? She happens to be cracked with Loki. You nailed it. It's moved Legion to the bottom of S tier for me. Still a good card, but you don't see him being played as much because you have a mini Legion, and more importantly, you have better than a Legion, and that's to shut off these powerful effects like you've alluded to, bro. It's so damn good. It's so cool to set up your turn to be able to squeeze in some cards into Sanctum, and then you're done, right? Or like all these Dead Space, and you play it, and then you can activate some cards, get some power on there, and then let Dead Space go back up, and then everything's, you know, you at least get the on reveal effect or whatever it might be. You know, it depends on how you play it, and I think for one cost, it doesn't get better. It doesn't get better than Snow Guard. I agree.
Some of the best art in the game too. And could you believe we're gushing about Snow Guard at this time? If we were to go back in time, like 2 months from now, but hey, you and Cozy, you're going to pick Snow Guard as your favorite one drop of September. We would have laughed in your face, but here we are.
Put us in a mental ward, man. That's what I would have thought, man. What do we've got at 2 costs? Your favorite 2 costs? We just talked about the top 10. But Alex, what is your absolute winner and favorite right now?
You know, I'm moving away from Jeff here because I know I pick Jeff every single month, but it's going to be Luke Cage for me. I've actually really liked Luke Cage. High Evo ramping right back up in popularity, especially in Conquest. It actually holds the highest win rate in Conquest right now at 61%. So for me, Luke Cage feels like an absolutely necessary card. It completely counters those style of lists. It's beneficial to you if you're playing those types of lists. Overall, Luke Cage for me, number 2.
I've got Kraven here. He didn't make my top 10, but that doesn't mean he's not my favorite. And if you look at my top 10, I would say a lot of those cards work because of Kraven, right? The Silk, the Angela. I've just, you know what it is it's going to go with some of my other favorite cards. But I love the variance in play that I can have with move cards and Kraven. Kraven holds down a location, and then you have the move cards to change your mind later on. To me, it's just a match made in heaven. You can even play him later, and it doesn't feel that bad because you just hold on to the lane with the move cards. I've got him at as my favorite 2 cost this season, which takes me to number 3, Alex. And this was tougher because I think I said this last season, but I have a hard time changing it. Like I don't know. Maybe there's a card I would cut close to her, but it's gonna remain the same. I'm gonna keep preaching her name. Jean Grey remains my favorite and is my most winning deck. Just edged out High Evo. And my biggest rank climber in Infinite play is my Jean Grey deck. Jean Grey is my play style, my favorite, and it combines everything I love in Snap.
I want to love Jean Grey. I'm not fully sold on her yet, but I think I'll get there. Just like with you selling me on Echo, right? I almost put Echo as my number 1. I have actually been loving Echo here, so I love the respect that it got on your tier list. Well, a little bit of respect anyways, but I do think that I do think that Jean Grey has the potential to be truly fantastic. I think that, honestly, it's just Kitty Pryde, man. It's Kitty Pryde that kills Jean Grey. And I think that is the major factor that holds her back. But I'm actually surprised you didn't pick my 3. Well, for Loki, me, like, how do you not pick Loki?
Yeah, dude, so Loki was my, like, I could stand by Loki being my favorite card in Snap. It's to the point where, like, at this point, I need to see some adjustment. And probably, like, next week with Mobius coming out, I'd be like, okay, I'm back on the Loki train. Now that we're a few weeks in, it's like, it felt weird picking him. because at this point I need to just have different creativity in my head. But yeah, dude, Loki inspires everything you love, so I would pick Loki. I get it, 100%.
Yeah, he's so fun. He's
Yeah,
such a great card. Like
he's
it
fun.
really is a great card. And once the balance gets put into a perspective that we don't feel bad playing him on stream or on camera or anything like that, right? Because you don't want to play like the top win rate deck. Like who wants to watch that? But honestly, like Loki is absolutely fantastic, and he's just fun. I think he's a great archetype, and I hope I think it's gonna be great for like as new players enter the game. Like it's just fun. Like oh, you don't have all these Series 5 cards, and your opponent does. Why don't you just use his cards, right?
Yeah.
Like. I think it'll be really good for new players too. In fact, I bet you it should be part of like a new player package. I think Loki's a great new player introduction package card eventually, but that's a whole other conversation. Number 4, Cozy, for you.
Number 4, I think we said, me and Alex were talking, and I was like, do you always have a tough time on 4? Because they're all kind of cool, but they're like, they're fine. I'll default to Iron Lad. How do I not? He's probably like the boring choice, right? He's the wave on 3 kind of thing, but why not? Why not have a little bit more excitement? You're not knowing what card he's going to copy, but B, you get the stats out there. He's an S tier card for me as well. I had him towards the end of it, but he still is an S tier because of the list that he fits in. So I don't need to go much further in why Iron Lad is my favorite card this season at 4. What about you?
I'm getting sick of Iron Lad. I don't know, man. Iron Lad is. I can't play the card. He always pulls garbage, and when my opponent does, of course it's Brood, of course it's Mr. Sinister, of course it's Galactus.
Yeah,
right. It's always a complete disaster. I don't get the kind of luck that my Iron Lad players do. For me at 4, I mean, I'm chirping your pick at Iron Lad. I just picked the most vanilla. It's Shuri. I hate to say it. I've actually really liked Shuri. I know. I almost could put Ghost Rider in because with the buff to Black Cat, I actually got to play Ghost Rider. I thought it was pretty cool. Really cool animation, pulling the thing in. But it's really Shuri. Shuri's just so damn good. And I think that the newly revitalized Kitty Pryde Bounce Shuri base list is kind of cool. I think it kind of changes the archetype a little bit to be a little fresh, a little unique. So yeah, Shuri, I know it's not sexy, but it's a damn good card. It's a damn good archetype. And for me at 4 cost, it's been the one that I've been playing.
Yeah, I almost put Dracula for that reason, of a sense of like he can still compete with Loki, and I just love him as a card to compete. He seems great again. Number 5, man, I'm going back to her. We're back again. It's Arrow. I've already talked to Arrow on the podcast a lot today, but how will this change for better or worse? We've talked about both ways with Wave having the significant hurt of Mobius coming to the game. But, man, having the choice of Arrow, just having that choice of playing Wave and then her, you are no matter what disrupting them as long as you can read where they want to play. Complete disruption. The Jean Grey, in addition to her, continues to just like make your opponent frustrated. Building on your Craven, making her now a 5/10, can compete with most. Gotta love it.
Yeah, I love Arrow, and it's a card that like I've been itching to play more of. So I'm interested to see what you've been brewing because, like naturally, like anytime you have Wave in a meta and you're able to control people's play, then Arrow increases in capability, right? So I'm actually really looking forward to playing some more Arrow. Hasn't been making my list personally, but it's one that like in terms of theory crafting moving forward, especially with Mobius coming out, where I'm calling him Triple M from right now. I can't say Mobius. I'm getting so confused myself. But my number 5, here's one I know you would never have guessed. So when I was testing Ravonna, I fell back to on reveal as a format because I thought, okay, there's a whole bunch of cards with on reveal. You have, you have your Wolfsbanes, you got your Ironhearts, but there's a 5-drop. It's the White Tiger. And I've not played White Tiger in so long. And it actually it was just fun to play. And I'm like, wait a minute, I actually really like this. And it's kind of silly because it's really not that great a card. But then I started playing my classic White Tiger, Odin, Wong combinations. I'm just throwing tigers all over the place. And I was like, damn, this actually feels pretty good. I don't even have to think. The tigers are just going to go where they have to go. You stormed? I don't care if you stormed. Well, you're playing Cyclops on me? That's not where my power comes. My power's coming on turn 6 where there's tigers all over the place. I actually have thoroughly enjoyed playing White Tiger again. It's not the best card in the game, but it's been my favorite card of this month at the 5 cost.
I like the pick. I thought maybe Gamora was going to sneak in here. I was like, all right, because I've been seeing a bit more Gamoras lately. But yeah, playing White Tiger for a hot minute with Ravonna was definitely a refreshing kind of call back to the early days, man. 6 cost cards. I might get heat, but I'm here for it, buddy. I'll take it all day. Goliath is a damn fun card in Snap. My God, he's so fun. The lockdown style play. Having Goliath as this, I've done my work in the pregame, and you've been trying to be greedy, doing whatever you want to do on 6, and I'm just going to end that right here, right now. Alioth gets the hate because he can cancel out decks that are trying to wait a little bit longer to get what they need done. I love him, dude. Alioth is fantastic. He's fun.
Much like Alioth, you destroyed my pick on 6 because I chose Alioth as well. So we were thinking along similar lines there. And if I had to pick another one, my fallback would have been the newly rebuffed Doctor Doom, who I'm finding is sliding into Mortalist now. Doctor Doom's back. But yeah, for me, it's been Alioth. I've loved Alioth. And it was very fast. Like, I quickly realized, like, the first night I was playing Alioth, like, this card's a good one. This is a fun one. It's going to piss people off. It's going to piss people off. But it's a damn fun card, especially when you land those soul reads like we've discussed a few times today. And that concludes this week's Marvel Snapchat episode. Thank you so much for joining us today, Cozy, and thank you, the viewers, the listeners, and everyone else who supports our content for joining us as well. We'll see you on that next Snapchat episode.